accuses armed groups in the Middle East of weaponizing water crisis. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rushan Fuad. The Yemeni government confirmed that it would take all the necessary measures to secure the oil sector from the Houthi attacks. According to the government, such attacks are a major escalation and have a negative impact on the humanitarian crisis of the country. The following report gives more details.
The Yemeni government urged the international community to take collective action to tether the Houthi militia terrorism, saying that condemnation statements shouldn't be enough. This came following a Houthi attack using drone against an oil terminal in eastern Yemen. The attack targeted Al-Dabba oil terminal near the port city of Al-Mukalla in Hadramaut Governorate. On Monday, the Yemeni army announced that it had intercepted Houthi drones targeting Al-Dabba while a ship was transporting a shipment of oil. Nevertheless, the army confirmed that one of the drones had hit the cargo platform and caused material damage. The terminal was the target of another assault by Houthis last month, as the Iran-backed militia continues to extort the internationally recognized government for sharing crude oil revenues from liberated areas in Hadramaut and Shabwa. The militia justified the attack as a warning to the government not to use the terminal to export oil. The government, by its side, warned in a statement that continued targeting of civilian objects and national economic facilities by the terrorist Houthi militia represents a dangerous escalation that would exacerbate the humanitarian situation and threaten energy supplies, freedom and safety of navigation, and international trade. The government described the Houthi attack as criminal, stressing that they represent flagrant violations of all international laws and norms. The statement added that Houthi attacks are carried out in blatant disregard for the catastrophic humanitarian, environmental, and economic repercussions that ensue on Yemen and its people. The government renewed its call for the international community to move from condemning the terrorist attacks to a collective action to keep the group's destabilizing activities. The Yemeni government also demanded Houthis to be designated as a terrorist organization, demanding more pressure on the Iranian regime to stop its destabilizing interference in the region. Regarding this Houthi escalation, the United Nations Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Grunberg, reiterated that an attempt to settle the country's conflict through violence is unhelpful, and that a long-term settlement can only be achieved through direct negotiations. Grunberg condemned the Houthi militia's several drone attacks in the past 2 months that targeted Yemeni government ports. He stressed that the conflict needs to be settled through negotiations, warning that more violence isn't going to lead to a long-term settlement. The United Nations envoy addressed the United Nations Security Council, saying that attacks on oil infrastructure and threats to oil companies undermine the welfare of the Yemeni people, a risk setting off a spiral of military and economic escalation as well.
The Yemeni government announced that it has set out a blacklist which includes senior Houthi officials involved in war crimes against Yemenis. This step comes in line with a recent decision taken by the government to designate the Houthis as a terrorist group. More details are within the following report.
The Yemeni government is preparing to blacklist several Houthi leaders and entities in implementation of its decision to classify the Iran-backed militia as a terrorist group. Houthi government, military and political officials, alongside any individual who have been proven to be involved in crimes, wars or crimes that violate international humanitarian law, will be blacklisted. Moreover, the Yemeni government will pursue Houthi interests and financial networks around the world. It affirmed that designating Houthis as terrorist organization is not merely symbolic and that will have repercussions on the group. It asserted that blacklisting of Houthis will not affect humanitarian relief operations in Yemen. The militia's insistence on targeting vital oil facilities damages the livelihood of Yemeni citizens. All the group's actions and violations against the Yemeni people are terrorist in nature, besides raping women and recruiting child soldiers. Additionally, Houthis have bombed mosques and attacked civilians and economic situations, both inside Yemen and in neighboring Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The government said, "What we have been saying for years is being echoed by the whole world, the United Nations Security Council and the Arab League. Houthis must know that they will not go unpunished for everything they do towards civilians, according to the lowest principles of international law." The Yemeni government has adopted a package of urgent procedural policies to apply the National Defense Council's decision designating the Houthis as a terrorist group. The procedures focused on two main legal and economic courses. Under legal course, blacklist would be updated to include Houthi political and field leaders, people working for the group in the capacity of ministers of head of government institutions, people blacklisted by other countries and bodies, people convicted and involved in war crimes or human rights violations, connivers involved in targeting economic facilities and threatening shipment companies. The Yemeni government has also prepared a list of entities and companies involved in funding Houthi terrorists. Necessary steps were also taken to track down funding networks abroad. All these entities and firms will be banned. Furthermore, the government revealed that there will also be many other measures that will be announced in due course.
The terrorist Houthi militia dug a water trench that separates villages south of Hodeidah. Local sources said that the most isolated residents of El Matina area from El Fazza. The sources confirmed that the Houthi militia imposed the military cordon to prevent approaching the trench digging sites. The militia has been extending that cordon since the beginning of January this year. In Hadramaut, 2 soldiers were killed and 3 others were wounded in a Houthi drone attack on a government military site. According to local authority source, the Houthi drone targeted the 23rd Brigade of the 1st Military Region in El Alam area. Masam, the mining project, reported that it had removed and destroyed more than 1,500 mines and unexploded ordnance. Masam said that the unexploded ordnance came from a number of West Coast districts.
طبعا مدينة تعز تعاني من أزمة مياه، وخاصة في ظل الحرب هذه الفترة هذه.
كان يوصل لنا الدبار 20 لتر بصعوبة، نروح نعبي الدباب مشاكل وصياح، نروح وإحنا ضابحين معقدين، نصل احنا يعني ما نشتيش الماء، كرهنا الحياة. وهي 7 أطفال معي، كيف تكفي يوم الدباب؟ أرجع عندي الثانية أجيب قيس اللي يقولوا ولا يستخدموني.
A recent report revealed that armed groups in the Middle East, including Yemen, have weaponized water crises in their countries. According to the UN estimates, 3.6 million people will face disruption of access to safe drinking water in Yemen. This report has more details.
In Yemen, the urbanization of the war and the growth of non-state armed organizations have resulted in the weaponization of essential civilian resources. As non-state armed organizations encounter asymmetrical threats from their rivals, they have turned to the weaponization of water to promote their military and political goals by preying on weaknesses in water-stressed areas. Non-state armed groups in Yemen have attacked Gulf water resources in an effort to destabilize the coalition, escalating the conflict outside of Yemen. In March, the Houthis attacked a desalination facility south of Saudi Arabia with missiles. By deploying cutting-edge military equipment such as UAVs and precise missiles, the Houthis were able to take use of water resources outside of their own physical boundaries. Given Saudi Arabia's economic intentions to build desalination facilities along the Red Sea coast, Targeting the facility further demonstrates the Houthis' capacity to interfere with crucial civilian infrastructure in a country that depends on desalination and lacks access to fresh water. Since 2015, the Houthis have surrounded Taiz and seized control of checkpoints, limiting roadways and humanitarian access as well as water supplies to Taiz in an effort to isolate and punish the local population for their resistance. The Houthis employed starvation as a form of collective punishment to crush resistance, but also as a negotiating tactic with the larger international community. Nearly two-thirds of the population lack access to clean water and sanitary facilities as a result of ongoing water shortages that have been made worse by the conflict. Landmines set by the Houthis to distract the coalition and the Yemeni military have also devastated water systems in Hodeidah, a heavily populated region and crucial port for humanitarian supplies. While landmines have helped the group's tactical goals by preventing forces from moving closer to the city, they have also devastated water infrastructure essential for the population's survival. In the absence of effective measures to counter the threat, non-state armed groups will probably continue exploitation of water resources as climate change intensifies water insecurity and makes access to water resources even more important in the region.
The U.S. Navy announced the seizure of drugs worth $20 million on a fishing vessel in the Gulf of Aden. According to the announcement, a U.S. destroyer intercepted a fishing vessel while it was crossing the international waters in the Gulf of Aden. Taiz University held a ceremony to announce the establishment of the Forum of Young Journalists for Yemen. The forum comes to form an extension with the media professionals who led media work in Taiz Radio. The forum was attended by media professionals and students. Pioneers at Taiz Radio were honored for their role in supporting the September and October revolutions.
The mission we are aspiring to launch today is to set up a youth forum that will bond with the work of pioneers who work at Taiz Radio and who supported the revolutions of September and October. The radio played an important role in combating the British colonialism. It also gathered the Yemenis as a unified front to topple the Imamate rule. We in the media division are honouring the pioneers and committing to following their national path. In order to correct the current image, we've to stick to the national agenda that were advocated by media pioneers.
My message to the youth today is that the nation needs you and you have to exert your efforts in acquiring knowledge. Keep on studying and learn from the history. Your country needs you. The student is similar to a soldier in the field. The soldier fights for his country and the student does the same. The future is yours. You can liberate the country from ignorance, servitude, tyranny, poverty, and hunger.
Coming next. Despite the advent of modern machines, farmers in Lahj continue to use traditional cultivation methods.
ناس ندي ماء من الغيل والغيلة بعيد، كنا ندي بالدواب نعبي ماء وتشجعنا. ننزل الساعة 5 رجعنا الساعة 9.
ما يجينا ظهر لأنه زحمة ما حد لي يخلي الجهل يغرق وإحنا تعبنا زيادة.
وكنت أحس صدري يوجعني وعز قدرك ركبي يوجعيني.
كنا بنستخدم حتى نغسل أولادنا يعني بأيام معدودة.
كنت أغيب على المدرسة لأن أنا كنت أروح الديمة.
حتى وإن كان يجي الأمطار تروح هدن لأنه ما في معايا غزالة.
الوقت نشتري ب30,000 دي مع هستيلك ما يغلقش معها الشهر.
بس راح تطلب الله ولا أي حاجة عاملة كل شغلك على الماء.
Welcome back. Despite the advent of modern machines, farmers in Lahj continue to use their own traditional cultivation methods. The seed yards is one example of those ancient agricultural methods. The following report gives more details.
At the end of the agriculture season here, in a Sabbayha in Lahj Governorate, the seeds yards represent one of the most prominent symbols and folklore inherited in the region. to indicate the amount of production of various types of grains that farmers here are keen to prepare their places to obtain better production.
بالنسبة للمجارين يتم توسعتها وتصفيتها 3 في 3.
We expand the yard 3 meters, multiplied by 3 meters and fertilize them. Then we bring soil and natural fertilizer and cover the yards with. 10 families from the village gathered to prepare the crop in this place. These are our traditions that we inherited from our ancestors, and it's the best way to extract seeds.
This heritage continues with traditional tools for hitting the wheat spikes in search of grain. Despite the modern tools used in the process of accelerating the production of grain, many areas of الصبيحة are still clinging to maintaining this type of traditional production.
وفي هذا الوقت ظهرت.
With the advent of modern machines, we still adhere to the traditional methods, which is the knocker, which preserves the remnants of wheat spikes, unlike modern machines.
Some of the farmers who are fans of this traditional method of grain production believe that it's the most suitable for them in harvesting the annual crop, as it was inherited down the ages, and it's financially inexpensive, unlike the tools that are used in this aspect today.
Mecca International Airport received today the first civilian plane carrying medical aid. This coincides with the inauguration of the second phase of the construction at the airport. An official source in Mecca Airport said that a United Nations plane landed at the airport runway after taking all safety and security measures. The airport was built with the support of the United Arab Emirates on the coast of the Red Sea, southwestern Yemen. In a recent report, the Yemeni Organization for Combating Human Trafficking revealed a blacklist of 71 Houthi leaders who trade and smuggled and counterfeit medicines. This report has more details.
In a recent report, the Yemeni Organization for Combating Human Trafficking revealed a blacklist of 71 Houthi leaders who trade in smuggled and counterfeit medicines. The report issued by the organization in its first edition said that the Houthis run their own smuggling ring in densely populated areas under their control, turning medicine into one of the largest sources of wealth for Houthi leaders who run huge smuggling networks. The import bills for medicines in Yemen amounts to about 88 billion riyals annually, according to the statistics of the Supreme Authority for Medicines run by the Houthis. The Houthis rely on the barter system when accepting medicinal grants from the UN and humanitarian organizations. Houthis restrict the admission of medicines unless an extensive number of conditions are met, the most important of which are their acquisition of a portion of the pharmaceuticals and large quantities of money. The Houthis' refusal of drug aid from international organizations may be attributed to an alliance between Houthi officials and drug smugglers to supply the market. The research found secret records pertaining to the Houthi network smuggling and selling in contaminated local marketplaces. 71 persons are allegedly involved in smuggling, counterfeiting, and selling pharmaceuticals for the benefit of private hospitals and pharmacies. The documents, according to the report, showed the involvement of the Houthi Minister of Health in cases of corruption and egregious neglect of the health sector. He has allegedly covered up crimes of smuggling and failed to take any actions against the offenders, instead willing to conceal the evidence and punish complainants. The report calls on the Security Council to impose international sanctions on the Minister of Health in the militia government and senior officials in his ministry who are involved in trafficking in smuggled, counterfeit, and corrupt medicines to finance the war and enrich the militia leaders. It also called on the Yemeni government to conduct an urgent investigation into the involvement of the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and other organizations concerned with the health sector in facilitating the Houthi seizure of humanitarian aid and selling it on the black market and depriving the Yemeni people of their natural right to medicine and treatment.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Yemen calls on the international community to take collective action against Houthi terror. Government blacklists senior Houthi officials involved in war crimes against Yemenis. New report accuses armed groups in the Middle East of weaponizing water crisis. This is the end of the news. It was Hushain Fouet. Thank you for watching.